Hi, y'all. First of all, I'm going to give you the website, the Utah State Board of Education Digital Teaching and Learning website. So I took you directly to the EdTech Management Resources page. But if you want to go to the DTL grant program, this will tell you all about the DTL grant program. But we're just going to focus on the EdTech Management program. So through the Digital Teaching and Learning grant, USBE gets funding for every single school that's in the DTL program, which is most schools. It's all districts and 2/3 of charters. So if you are in the Digital Teaching and Learning grant program, you have access to an EdTech management resource. You're guaranteed that. If you are not in the Digital Teaching and Learning program, check in with us. And if we have funds available, we can set you up. And we just know that year to year, whether or not that's the case. So checking in with the DTL team would be a good way to know that. Through the Digital Teaching and Learning grant program, you have a choice of 4 different providers. And these are in alphabetical order: ClassLink, Global Grid for Learning, Learn Platform by Instructure, and Lightspeed. And so the deadlines for this past year were a little bit later because the procurement process took longer than we anticipated. And so last year's deadlines were November 1st through November 8th. This year's deadlines will be made known to you through the DTL list. If you are in the DTL program, we have your information and we will send that to you. If you're not in the DTL program, please feel free to email any one of us.
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate form, but some of my charter schools want to use Clever, for example. I think, is that the same as Global Grid for Learning, maybe?
It is not.
Or some single sign-on.
You bring up a really good point, and I'm really glad that you brought this up. A lot of the 4 companies that met the procurement qualifications, a lot of them have single sign-on availability. And that's just a bonus. That's an add-on. So the DTL program is not meant to fund single sign-ins. It's meant to fund managing your EdTech systems, the usage that you have. So it's a bonus if you choose a program that does that. And you can tell what each program does by clicking on these links, and it will give you an overview of what the provider does as well as a video.
I am Steve Kindle with Global Grid for Learning, actually now SchoolDay, and Padraig will go into that just a little bit, but I am the senior business development rep for Utah, and very happy to be here today. And the primary part of this presentation is going to be provided by our Chief Product Officer, Padraig O'Shea. So without further ado, I'll just move right over to Padraig.
Yeah, hey everybody. Nice to virtually meet you. Like Steve mentioned, my name is Padraig O'Shea, and I'm the Chief Product Officer with SchoolDay, formerly known as GG4L. So we've just launched a brand new brand March 31st. So we're kind of into our 2nd week of it. So if I slip into the old GG4L every now and again, you'll have to forgive me. But SchoolDay, what we do is we connect EdTech apps without risking data. And so quite unique in our approach to how we help school districts to manage their ecosystem, understanding that there's a lot of requirements around managing the individual vendors and the data and the usage on which vendors are approved and not approved, and for many of the vendors, what we're trying to do is really make sure that we're giving other options other than just turning off vendors if they don't meet some of the requirements, and giving a little bit more choice and a little bit more nuance to how you can work with vendors that teachers might want to use that haven't all the bells and whistles from a privacy perspective. And I'll explain more what I mean by that in a second. SchoolDay is used in about 36,000 schools, about 18 million learner records, and about 1,000 edtech integrations that we have. We, do integrations on behalf of Google and the Grow Google program. We do, lots of integrations on behalf of organizations like D2L, where we'll do, not just rostering integrations, but we go much further than that, where we'll, share grades back and forth between SISs and LMSs, or LMSs and content providers. So there's quite a wide range of services that we can provide as through the SchoolDay platform. Our core focus is around data privacy and enabling schools and school districts and charter schools to make sure that they can manage their edtech ecosystem more effectively. And the reason why we kind of focus in on this challenge, I think, is pretty obvious, but more and more is being asked of IT teams in school districts to manage more and more vendors, and vendors are getting into school districts in all kinds of different ways, right? It's not just the old procurement and, you get approved and everything goes through a security and privacy check up front. But actually what happens a lot of the time is, I'm sure is that, a teacher can just download a tool or just access a tool, or a student could even sign up for something and start sharing their PII data through that app just online. And so we took some of the stats here from our colleagues at Learn Platform, but some of the data here is pretty stark in terms of the number of applications that the average school district is using across across their the ecosystem. So on average, it's about 1,400 apps in a single school district, which is an awful lot. And if even a fraction or most of those are consuming PII, then the challenge is that as an industry, what we're doing is we're taking this information that we're supposed to keep near and dear, and what we're doing is we're duplicating it, and we're duplicating it across all of these individual vendors. And some of that is done through automated rostering. Some of that is done when a teacher shares a code to an app, and all the students go in and they log in and they type in their username or their first name and last name and then the code, and it personalizes it all for the teacher. And so much of this data is going out to so many vendors that how are we or you as a IT team supposed to be able to manage all of that? And that's really the problem that we focused in on is where do we start with a problem like that? And that gets us onto our IT console. So the idea here is, when we're talking about the problem that I was just outlining, a couple of years ago, some of the school districts that we're working with said to us, well, Paudie, that's great, and we agree that's the absolutely huge problem, but we can't even see what that problem looks like, right? So we know what's happening, but we've got no real way of tracking, where are the tools, who's using what. So yeah, we'd love to be able to make informed decisions and anonymize data, or web filter block individual applications, but we can't really do that unless we have a window into this problem that you're describing. And so this is where we've come up with our IT console, and I'm going to share what that looks like now in kind of a live presentation here. So when you first log in the console, I've logged in here as a demo user, and that demo user is kind of a hybrid between a teacher and an admin. And the reason why I've done that is to make it easy for my presentation, so I don't have to keep logging in and logging back out to show you different portions of it. So there's a nice permission system within the platform to allow you to basically create the views and the forms that you want for individual roles, and there's a lot of flexibility around that. If I was a teacher, what I would do is I would log in and I would see this list of apps. Now, how does this list of apps get populated? Well, when we're deploying the IT console or the SchoolDay platform, what we do is we actually deploy an extension, and that extension deploys into a browser. So, Chrome, Edge browsers. And then what it will do is it will start to track time used across various EdTech apps. So we deploy this extension out to your teachers, your staff members, your students, And what happens is our technology is basically tracking the time that people are using various applications with the purpose of being able to populate this dashboard automatically. It can be rolled out, to individual, like, so if we wanted to, we could just roll it out to students and just track the students. If we want to roll it out to everybody, we can do that. Back-end staff, all of the above, right? Anybody with a device, it's dependent on the rollout and how we decide to run the project. But general idea then is once it's deployed, what it does is it starts tracking all of this time. So this list of apps that is on the screen here, it will automatically populate. So there's no kind of setting up, there's no importing data, there's no kind of trying to get started, right? It will just start populating itself. And what we've really focused in on is ease of use for the IT team as well as the teaching team, the teachers, to make sure that everybody kind of gets the set of data that they require in a very easy to understand and easy to deploy way. Now, if there was apps that, maybe because this is automated and it basically as people use the app, they're going to start showing up and you're going to have more and more number of users and more usage over time. This is a demo app, so our demo account, so there's no usage numbers, but you would see if there was 200 people logging into Course Hero, you would see 200 here, and if they spent 10 minutes each, you'd see 2,000 minutes, right? So that's the general gist of it. Now, if you were procuring a new application and it wasn't on this list, but you wanted to put it on the list, you can just go up to Add Application. And what that will allow you to do is search across our database of about 10,000 applications. So you can do that, find one that isn't on your list, and what it will do is it will populate it here, even though there's no time associated with it. The other thing you can do, of course, is if it wasn't on the list, same place, you click Add Application. If it isn't in this list here and you wanted to add one that, maybe a brand new startup that we haven't come across or one ed tech or nobody has kind of listed, what you can do is you can request an application to be added, and then you just fill in your name, your email, the link to their website, the application name, and our team will just add that in there. It usually takes only a few minutes to do it, and then we'll be aware of them and we'll get added to this list. But to be honest, that feature gets used so rarely because we've already cataloged around, I think it's somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 apps already inside our IT console. So everything you've ever used is probably already in here, and it's going to automatically populate for you as you go. Now, as a teacher, I can go up and I can see all of the apps, or I can go up and I can filter down for individual apps. And so we can configure the tags or the filters here based on the district. So each LEA would get to decide their own vetting statuses. We do have default out of the box statuses, but you can decide which ones you want. It can have its own flow. So like in this case, it's approved for use is kind of the final status, or not approved, depending on whether the outcome of it. But it can pend curriculum review, interoperability review, privacy review, security review. You can add in legal review, kind of whichever ones you want as you go along. And the general idea is you can just, click here and filter down by one of those tags. Now, you're seeing quite a few tags in the filter here, and that is because I am, like I said, a hybrid between both a teacher and an admin, so I can see lots and lots of things in here. But as I scroll down, you can see there's loads of things I can filter by, and so it's pretty limitless in terms of what we can do. For a teacher, what we would do is there's permissions, so you can say, actually, what I want to do is I only want to show certain tags. So maybe just show the approved and the not approved for use, and let's hide absolutely everything else. Make it really simple for them to understand what's going on. Or we could share, some of these additional tags if we wanted to as well. So it's all customizable. It's all permission based, and you get to define the filters that you want for your LEA. You can also filter by schools. We can, add other filters depending on what you want. So once you've done that and you're kind of looking at an individual app, what I can do is I can go into one and I can click in it. And again, what we've really focused in on is trying to automate a lot of the busy work, right? A lot of the work that you folks have to go and do. And in doing that, what we have done is we populated this dashboard. So for every app that we discover, or that because somebody in your district is using it, it gets added to that list, and then we end up with a dashboard that looks just like this. And so what we're able to do is show an overall risk score, and I'll explain that in a few seconds, but an overall risk score of what we consider to be the risk for this particular application. We can show the number of active users, so how many people in your district have logged into this app in the last 12 months, how many seconds have they spent in this app. So sometimes you'll have a lot of users log in, they'll log out, and they don't use it a lot. Or sometimes, you'll have very few users going in, but they'll use it an awful lot. And that's really instructive for if you do decide that you want to web filter block it. Well, you're kind of starting to understand who's going to be impacted. The other thing we can do is we can populate like the most active schools in your district and the most active users in your district. So the power schools and the power users. And this would just give you the names of the individuals and the names of the schools listed here. The reason for that is, well, if you are going to say, unapprove this app or not approve the app, you want to probably know who you're going to affect as part of that before you make the decision, right? So who do I contact? So we'll actually give you that list. You can go in, you can see all of the individual users, and reach out to some of them. So if a group of teachers in a particular school started using an application that you don't want approved and you don't want used in the district, you can give them a heads up. Hey, we're going to disable this. We're going to web filter block this. Is there any reason why we shouldn't do that? You can have that kind of conversation. So that's really helpful. The other thing we do is we use AI quite a bit in this tool, which I think everybody's saying now, but we were doing this for quite a while. So one thing we do is we detect PII usage. So if somebody opens a web page, they visit some kind of EdTech app, what we do is we'll actually automatically, using our extension, understand if there's a first name, last name, email address, or password, or anything like that being entered into the web application. And so again, that will give you an understanding from an IT perspective. Hey, what's really being used here from a PII perspective, and we can filter and customize what we're tracking in these little widgets. The suspected PII usage, this is us based on reviewing the privacy policy of the application. So for Canva, what we've done is we've used AI, we've read their privacy policy, and we've taken out all of the individual pieces that are listed in their privacy policy that we believe are PII data, and we're just showing that as suspected PII usage, right? So this one we know it's being used because we've actually seen a user type it in. We've seen them type in their first name and last name. This one is based on the privacy policy. It's highly likely, so you're seeing likely here. It's not guaranteed, but it's likely that this PII data is in the platform. The other thing we do is we're helping you to, again, all the time what we're trying to do is automate the busy work, right? Like the hard part of tracking and reviewing and all the legal work and all the bits and pieces. And that's not to say that you don't have to do it, but what we're doing is trying to speed it up for you. And so what we do is we take in the privacy policy of every one of those vendors that I mentioned, so 9,000 to 10,000 apps that we're tracking. And it will, again, automatically filter down that 9,000 or 10,000 apps to the ones that you're using in your district. And then we will review their privacy policy and we'll give it a score. So it gets a score based on how well do we believe that this does against COPA and FERPA, and we can put in other legislation and other privacy policies. If your district has a privacy policy, we can put that in there, and it will consider that as well, and it will give you an overall score. And then 77 out of 100 is instructive, but it's not really overly helpful, right? It's what you really want to know is you want to know why, right? Where is it falling down? So it's doing really well in information collected, use of information. But the updates to privacy policy, it's only getting a 6. And if you look here, it's saying, that it doesn't state when and how often it actually reviews it. Canva reviews their privacy policy. And so it does say that it was reviewed last on February 15th. So if you're happy with that, then maybe that's not a big red flag, but now you haven't had to read an entire, 6-page document and looking for everything. Same thing with compliance with laws, overall transparency. So lots of different pieces. And what we've really focused in on is our AI will give you a snippet as to not just like, hey, this gets a 2, but it will actually give you an understanding as to why it got a 2. The other thing we're doing is we are working with One EdTech. And so we have access to their APIs and we can pull in the One EdTech information. So again, you can understand from the One EdTech Trust Ed program, what did they think about this application? And we are currently working on the Student Data Privacy Consortium and pulling in their information. So again, that will be fed in. And we're also working with ISTE to pull in all of the information that they have on the product index. And so from one, and that's available for back to school, both of those. So the idea is that when you look at an app, here's what the industry thinks about it. Here's what SchoolDay's AI thinks about it. And then obviously you can make your own judgments and review the documents and list those in the tags and make the changes to the tags here. So, hey, this tool is, not so good at, it's more tier 2 than tier 3 intervention and so on and so forth. You can change your tags up and down. Actually, this isn't approved for use. It's not approved for use, right? So it's really easy to kind of go and change this as an IT person after reviewing all of this information. And again, like I said, there's a workflow where you can have individual people set up to have different roles. So, I can't move it from pending curriculum review to a pending interoperability review because that's not my role, but somebody in that role would be able to move it up the ladder in terms of the progression of these tags. So there's lots and lots of sophistication around the workflows and the management of the individual pieces of the data here. So the other thing we do is with the tags, we can create any tags you want. You can just go into the tag manager, create all of the tags. We have created a, the metadata dictionary from Utah, the Department of Education. So we've basically put that in here, and so you can map that out and click all of the different pieces for this app. Whether it's a federal requirement and so on and so forth. And once you do that, in our reporting section, what you can do is once you've set up all the tags, you've tagged everything correctly, what we can do is we can actually go in then and you can download it. And it's not exactly the same format as the YouTube, but it's really, really close. It's really, really close. So you got the category, the data recipient, the purpose. So we've mocked this up to be incredibly similar. So we've taken in all of the names and whatnot from the metadata dictionary. So, and then I tagged a few, and then I exported this to give you an example of what it would feel like to be able to provide what I would say is about 96% the same format as the example that was given from the metadata dictionary on the DOE website. So really, really powerful, easy to use. So what happens, if I'm a teacher, I can go in here too. I don't see all of this information, but I see a subset of it. And again, that's configurable based on, your requirements to say, hey, what we want to do is we do want to show some of this information, help them to understand why we make the decisions we make. But it is customizable. The thing that a teacher would do is they would go up and they can start the vetting process. So what they can do is they can go up here and they wouldn't see all the options here potentially, but they would see the request vetting. And when they click that, what it does is it automatically then puts Canva into the queue for apps to be vetted, and it sets them to the not started status in this example at least. And again, that's all configurable. And at that point, then the workflow behind the scenes will kind of kick in and start notifying people and whatnot. So pretty powerful and really straightforward for somebody to use. One of the things in the requirements was, okay, but how is this going to help us if we wanted to pilot or deploy or try this application? How can you help with that? And that's really where SchoolDay comes into its own. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to click on actions and I can go request vetting. And when I click on the request vetting, when I go to actions, I can actually go and deploy an individual app. So I want to deploy Canva in my district. So we will, and again, this was in some of the questions. So we will integrate with your SIS. We can integrate with your LMS. We can integrate with your HRIS. So we're a very sophisticated data exchange platform behind the scenes. And the idea is, here's the information, what we know about these vendors. But if you decide that you want to work with it, we want to take it to the next step and help you to actually deploy that application in your district as well. And so what you can do is you can say, okay, we want to, maybe it's a pilot or a trial or a full deployment, whichever one you whatever stage you're at with the individual app. And so what I can do is I can go in and I can say, oh, you know what? I don't want to share Canva across all of the schools in my district. I just want to maybe try it out in these 2 high schools, right? And then you can go down here. The other thing we do is we offer the ability to share data to vendors without sharing the PII data. So if you remember earlier when I was on the slides, I was describing how our kind of reason for being is to try to reduce the duplication of the data across the different vendors that you might want to share it to. Well, this is one of the mechanisms that we have to do that. So when we are enabling the privacy shield, as we call it, it will actually ask you whether you want to share this information or do you want to just share the anonymized data. So if you share the anonymized data, what will happen is instead of Canva getting the first name, last name, email address, real data for that user, what we will do is we will provide anonymized tokens, and those tokens are anonymized little bits of data, will end up going to Canva. So if Canva were ever hacked, there was a cyber attack on them and some of their data got leaked out, well, none of the PII data from your district or your school would be in Canva because all we did was we shared we didn't share the first name, last name, email address, phone numbers, all that kind of stuff. So you can filter all that out before you share it over. It doesn't completely eliminate the risk, right? Like there's still some risk with deploying any application. There always is. But what it does is it drastically reduces down that risk, right? So if you have 1,000 apps and you can even, turn on PII Shield for 20% of them, well, you've massively reduced your surface area for attack. And over time, and like we always talk about this privacy and anonymization stuff is a bit of a journey. You can't go and just turn this on for all of your vendors overnight, but you can over time start to take the number from 1,400 apps being used in the average district. Can you get that down? Can you get 100 vendors on it this year? Next year, can you get 300 vendors? And over time, can you reduce it down? You'll always need to share PII data to certain applications, like you're probably always you're always going to need it in your SIS, for example, because that's where the data originates from. That's where people type it in first day. But can we anonymize a lot of the content vendors that just integrate with your LMS, or the vendors that just require and get access to roster data? Absolutely, right. And so I mean, we're doing this in LA Unified, one of the, I think it's the second largest school districts in the US. We've done it with big well-known vendors like Coursera, and others. And so the idea being that really easily we can turn this off. And one of the reasons why I like to talk about Coursera is really because it actually had a positive effect, not just from a data privacy perspective, but also like from the vendors perspective. Like Coursera didn't necessarily want to enter into K-12 because they were afraid of housing this type of data in their platform. And so when they partnered up with SchoolDay, we're able to share the data they require for their platform to work, but we do that without having to share this PII data. And so it's really impactful for both the vendors and, of course, the school districts that we work with, because the beauty is we don't have, I mean, we still have to care, but we don't have to give as much scrutiny as we normally would with a Coursera type vendor. So it's really powerful. You can get really sophisticated. Like I said, there's a whole platform here of managing applications and the SSO portal and all whole kinds of things, right? But the general gist of it is, you know, what schools you want to do. Do you want to turn on Privacy Shield or not? If there's individual attributes as well, you can turn off things. So I don't want to share the middle name, for example, like you just turn that one off, right? So there's on every integration, there's a capability to decide what data you want to share. So we won't even share like anonymized data for the middle name anymore now. And this all takes into consideration the data that Canva in this example, but any vendor requires to make their platform work. So we'll never allow you to break the integration by changing something, which is pretty impactful. And like I said at the top, we already have this one deployed in this demo site, but at the top, you can select the schools, but you can go much further than that with your data filtering too. And so we're always talking about data anonymization and not sharing a lot of data, but we're also a big proponent of data minimization, right? So share as little data as you possibly can to the downstream vendors all the time. And so this is why we've created a really sophisticated filter options as well. So when I'm deploying my data to Canva in this example, not all the students are going to use it, right? The elementary school students are probably not going to be going in creating brochures and flyers and stuff for at least the earlier years. So why would I share that information, right? So I'm just going to share it to the older kids. Maybe it's only going to be used in one classroom or one grade. You can filter it down exactly to the right set of data, so that we're not sharing anything more. If you have the DPA, and you want Canva to sign that, you can upload that here as well. And when they're accepting the data, so there's a two-way handshake on our platform for any integration. So this is us sharing. So this is the demo school district that I'm in. This is us sharing. So we're actually doing a data consent to share data to Canva. Canva won't get access to that until they accept it. And when they're accepting it, they will get access to the data privacy agreement that you store in this attachment section. And when they request changes, we'll ask them to agree to that DPA before they'll even kind of get access to that data. So again, lots and lots of tools in here to kind of help to protect you. And of course, it comes with a really powerful data trail as well. So again, it's really important that we know all the vendors that we're sharing data with, but it's also important to know exactly what data we're sharing to an individual vendor and what they're getting on any given day. So Bowclips here, one of the vendors that we can do that supports our anonymization. What we can do is we can say, hey, we've actually shared in this example 100,000 students to them, right? You shared 45 teachers in this example. So you can really granularly get in, and that's on Wednesday the 16th, right? So a couple of days ago, and you can go down and you can see how has the data changed over time. So what did you give them yesterday? What did you give them today? So it's really impactful in terms of if you ever did have a data breach, you need a platform like this because, well, you need to know who had the data, right? So what data, like if God forbid that vendor ever had a data breach, you need to know what data belonging to your district was in that vendor, and you need to know that really quickly. And so you can go in, you can see the audit trail of that one's not populated. You can go in and you can see the audit trail of every single piece of data and how it's changed and who's had it, who's accessed it. All of that stuff is right within the platform, as well as things like data quality. So you can see all of the bits and pieces around that. The data browsing. So if you did ever want to go in and see all of the data, you can just jump in here. You can see here's the parent information or the contact information that's within SchoolDay. And then you can see which vendors are actually accessing this data as well. And you can see how this data has changed over time. So individual students, you can see, hey, this student's email address changed, all of that. So there's a whole audit trail here. And again, it's all designed around helping you to understand the vendors that you're working with, what data they're having, and helping you, again, if we go back to the console here, to really track absolutely everything from top to bottom of an entire deployment. It will even on the last day that you're working with that vendor, if you decide to, if it was a pilot and you've deployed it through SchoolDay, well, on the last day of that pilot, they still have your PII data, right? And do you really want to trust that they're going to, not that we don't trust our vendor community, but do you really want to trust in security? I guess you can't really trust anyone. So do you really want to trust that they're going to delete that data on the day that you said that you no longer have a relationship? Well, our platform will actually roster in completely anonymized data on that last day of the pilot for you if that's what you chose to do. And that will overwrite all the data that we previously sent into that vendor. So again, not a completely foolproof plan, but certainly a step in the right direction of trying to minimize the risk around sharing data, data privacy, data minimization, all of these things, right? So we're really trying to give and share a pathway for school districts to reduce down the heavy workload on IT teams in managing all of this information. It's just, I mean, there's just so many applications to look at. We have a bunch of dashboards as well. I'll just run through a few of them. So this is, kind of a high level dashboard where you can see all of, a certain number of applications with unknown risks, which ones have been discovered that are part of the One EdTech that are approved by One EdTech in their Trust Ed program. Which ones have you? So there's certain ways that you can set it up. You can rename these things to match your internal way that you want to manage it. But when I approve an app and say it's okay for PII data to enter into that app, well, it will start adding up here. PII would approve. So these are apps like your SIS, right, or your LMS, where you probably can never anonymize them, right? They're always going to have PII, but we have reviewed them, we have vetted them, and we have said it's okay for them to house our PII. So you can see high usage apps, low usage apps, and then trends over time. And again, this is all customizable, so you can see exactly what's going on. I want to go back into one little thing that I didn't explain. So this dial, right? So when we were looking at Canva a while ago, we have information about detected PII usage, suspected PII usage, privacy policy. We got the One EdTech data. We're going to be adding the Student Data Privacy Consortium data. We're going to be adding data from the ISTE product index. So like it's an awful lot of stuff still, right? So what we've tried to do is we've tried to say, well, how do we give something really simple for somebody at a glance to kind of take a risk score of, and so this again isn't a golden rule which says, hey, if SchoolDay says it's 99% safe, doesn't mean that you still don't have to review it. Absolutely you do. But what it can do is it can steer your effort. So you can say, hey, I want to actually review the ones with the greatest risk first and then kind of work our way down. And how this score calculates, we knew that every district is going to have, or every LEA is going to have slightly different variations on how they want to do this. And so what we've done is we've created our risk scoring where you can decide, hey, you know what, the AI policy review tool from SchoolDay, I think that's really cool and really important. So we'll pull that up. But the One EdTech data, we're not a member of that. We're going to pull that way down, right? Or how often it's being used, we can consider. And all of this will automatically work out an overall risk score weighting. And it works basically the same way as your gradebook does with categories and scores, right? And it will figure out an overall score based on what weight you give to each one of those categories of data that we're tracking within the platform. And so this, as from an IT perspective, then gives you this overall risk score, and you're able to say, okay, well, I'm going to steer my effort on the ones that are have the highest overall risk score, right? Which again takes into consideration usage and the various bits of information we have about risk in the platform. So gives you a little bit of customization, and it helps you to kind of steer the risk score in the way that you want it to be steered. which is impactful. Now, I did mention that we've got lots of dashboards, and we do. So we have dashboards, so I can go in here and I can look at, you know, lots and lots of things. So, you know, how much time people are spending on individual apps, what apps they are. We can automatically categorize those applications into different topics and then show on a graph how much students are spending time in each graphic or on each app. You can dig in here and you can really kind of granularly look at things. So you can say, I want to see this for you know, all schools, or I just want to, you know, look at a particular school, all grades, a particular grade. I just want to filter down and I want to see, hey, how much are people really using Newzilla, right? And you can go in, and this level of dashboard will give you a little bit more information around usage and that kind of thing, versus the IT console, which is showing you more about users and time and the risk. So you can go in here, you can look at all of that. You can go into data. And you can look at, you know, across schools, you can look across classes, and this is more like comparison. So if you wanted to see how much things are being used from one school to the next school, or from one class to another class, that kind of thing. You can look at individual students as well if you want to dig down that deep. And we can go in and we can say, okay, well, you know, for an individual application, let's see what the, you know, so maybe YouTube, right? YouTube usually gets some good hits in a school district. So so you can start to see you know, across those classrooms how much time is really being used within this, by, you know, using this particular application. And then you can dig into one of those classes and further filter it down, look at the individual students that are in the class. And again, this is available to teachers. And the teachers can look at this for their individual classrooms, but they can't look at it for any other classroom, right? Only the classrooms they teach. It's available at a principal level as well, or a school building level, should I say, where a school building person can look at all the classes across their school. And then there's also a district dashboard where you can look at engaged time on various applications from the district level. So it kind of augments the IT console that I was showing earlier. So lots and lots of pieces here. I really appreciate your time today. I think, you know, SchoolDay has really focused in on a kind of three-pronged approach, should I say. So the first stage is monitoring and understanding what's happening in your ecosystem, even all of those apps outside of, you know, the real sphere of control of the IT team. So understanding is the first, or monitoring. The second is controlling, right? That ability to make decisions, anonymize apps, data minimization, deploy apps, try it for a trial, all of that. So kind of control that data and trying to take back control of the data through the anonymization. And then the third stage then is, well, now we got what we're doing underhand, we can start to you know, discover new apps and deploy them all through SchoolDay as well, and manage it all through one central console that gives me a view into where all my data is, and all the audit trails for how that data is moving over time, as well as helping me to automate in the way that a traditional rostering vendor would. So it will still help you do all of those tasks. It's just doing it in a more private and security aware manner. So I appreciate everybody's time. And I think we could probably wrap up there.
To follow up with any questions, any discussions with, as Padraig had said, there's a lot here and a lot more that to talk about as well. So if there are any follow-up questions, they can be addressed to me, and I will make sure that we're able to get together and answer all questions and support you any way you can. So.
Of course, I have a slide with contact information.
Well done.
I didn't forget that. Yeah, so so Steve at SchoolDay.com will get us. So thankfully, it's a very simple email address, and I knew it off heart. All right, thanks, folks.